I'm so excited to get into our last story today. It's about the most valuable shipwreck in history and why several different countries and groups think they have claim to its $18 billion of treasure.
It's all very national treasure. There are emeralds, gold, and silver found 2,000 feet underwater, and the dispute over who owns all of this treasure has been raging on for decades, and the case is actually now being seen by the Permanent Court of Arbitration at The Hague.
So let's go back 3 centuries to 1708 and imagine you're a Spanish sailor who just loaded up your ship with emeralds and gold and silver from Central America, and you're sailing away and you see the horizon in front of you and you feel the rocking of the waves and you feel the sun on your
friend. Let's get on with it.
Sorry. So the Spanish ship, the San Jose, was sailing off the coast of Colombia in hopes of taking the $18 billion of riches on board back to Spain when it was shot down by a British warship.
The British wanted to seize the ship and its treasures for their queen. The Spanish and the British were engaged in combat, fighting off of their ships for an hour until the British accidentally shot a cannonball into the San Jose's storage of gunpowder and explosives.
Such an easy mistake.
So obviously the ship blew up and everybody sank within minutes.
And so the treasure sat at the bottom of the ocean for centuries until the 1980s, when an American salvage company located the wreck and was able to verify it was indeed the San Jose by, I love this, the distinctive engravings of dolphins on the bronze cannons.
And so now we get into the dispute over, okay, who actually owns this treasure? So let's start with the Spanish. They obviously claim that the San Jose was their ship, and so they own all the cargo that was on the ship.
Saw that one coming. And then, of course, Colombia says they're the rightful owners since this was found in Colombian waters. And actually, the president of Colombia has said one of his goals by the end of his term in 2026 is to raise the ship and put it in a museum. But you'll see that's not as clear cut for them as you would think.
And then we have this American salvage company that actually found the treasure and claims that since it found the holy grail of shipwrecks, it deserves a piece of the pie. And that's where things get a little tricky.
Yes, so according to court documents, the salvage company handed over the coordinates of the shipwreck to the Colombian government with the understanding that it was entitled to half of the $18 billion of treasure. But before the ship could be raised, the laws in Colombia shifted, and the salvage company has found itself defending its right to the treasure in court for decades now.
And the conflict deepened even more in 2015 when the Colombian government said that they found the shipwreck completely separate from the American salvage company at a different location, even though the location was just a mile or two from the American coordinates.
So right now, the American salvage company is suing the Colombian government in front of the Permanent Court of Arbitration at The Hague, which is, of course, one of the most powerful courts in the world.
But we're still not done with the list of people who claim they have the right to the treasure. So indigenous groups from Peru and Bolivia are saying that they were enslaved by the Spanish and basically forced to mine these precious metals in the Andes where they lived. And then were obviously forced to give all of their wealth to the Spanish. So now these indigenous groups are trying to stop international governments and treasure hunters from taking all the gold and silver that they say belongs to their people.
But the atrocities of imperialism don't end there, because the Spanish also forced the indigenous Bolivian Caracara people and enslaved African workers in New Grenada to mine precious metals for them as well. So their descendants have also made a claim.
And then there are the archaeologists and historians who think that the shipwreck should just be left alone. And there are differing opinions as to why, but some maritime experts are saying that the San Jose is a graveyard and should be respected as such since 600 people drowned that day. And others say that the ship should be left in peace and explored as an artifact on the ocean floor.
Nautical archaeologists, which we didn't even know was a thing, have said any kind of disturbance to the site would be ill-advised because, to quote them, the ship has reached equilibrium with the environment and the materials have been under these conditions for 300 years, so there's no better way for them to be resting.
It's interesting just how complicated this case is. You think there would be laws about property underwater and claims at sea already, but apparently the UN says that there are 3 million sunken vessels on the ocean floor, and there is very little clarity on who has the right to explore or keep it.
Well, we tried to do some research into if there's any legal standing for one of these entities over the others. And we found in 1982, the United Nations adopted the Convention on the Law of the Sea, which is considered the Constitution of the Oceans. But weirdly, it says very little about shipwrecks. So because of that, the UN adopted a second set of rules in 2001 called the UNESCO Underwater Cultural Heritage 2001 Convention. Just rolls off the tongue. That says more about wrecks, but a lot of countries have refused to ratify it because they're afraid it will weaken their claims to what they find underwater.
And it's important to note that the US and Colombia have not signed it.
I wonder why not.
So as of now, the Hague case is still pending. And in this atmosphere where everyone is questioning what ownership actually means, especially when it comes to art and artifacts and precious metals in museums, this case is bound to set a real big precedent.
Yeah, the San Jose went down in the era of finders keepers. So if the ship had just sailed back to Spain as planned, the riches, the treasure would be squarely in Spanish possession and would not be up for any kind of discussion. And same with if British had conquered the ship, which they did all the time, then it would be in British possession and there would be no debate about it. But because it happened to sink, we even get to have this conversation. But Mabel, if you were a judge at The Hague, who would you say deserves the treasure between the Spanish, the Colombians, the American Salvage Company, and the indigenous groups?
Okay, if I were a judge at The Hague, I would say that Colombia definitely deserves at least some of it, because in the most basic legal way, it was found under their waters, so they deserve some of the treasure.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'd give a cut to the American Salvage Company for finding it, and then a cut to the indigenous groups as a form of reparations, and then I'd give the rest to Colombia.
None for the Spanish, sorry.
Well, thanks for listening. We'll continue our special election coverage next week.
Bye!